has told you through its teaching tradition, these are written by people and they're not canonical, they're not inspired by God. So they are indeed forgery in the name of God. So if the Christians within the first 400 years were able to lie about God and write gospels, then it should become obvious to you that people can corrupt the book of God. If you go to the British Library and you see the Codex Sinaiticus, a very early manuscript, 4th century manuscript of the Bible, you will see the Bible that in the British Library has text which is not the same that you have in your text in King James. Because many people, many people corrupted the text of the Bible.
But there were two versions. There was one from Alexandria, one from Antioch. Apparently the one from Alexandria got corrupted, whereas the one from Antioch did also.
Yeah, but you at least accept people's hands corrupted the scripture of God. So the Quran alludes to this fact and says, this is what happened in history. So how can you even rely on a scripture which has been tampered with? Quran gives you the correct information what the scriptures contain.
Listen to us.
Sorry, I apologize.
It
Continue.
was a group of real Christians from Antioch that they were writing the manuscript with the fear of God. They were writing exact copies, and those Christians, they were separate from all the one from Alexandria, Asia, where they corrupted the Bible. They were willing to give their life to write the Bible in the exact copies. And then when the persecution came, the Catholic Inquisition came, some of those people, they hidden in the Alps, and they keep writing exact copies. So God preserved his way. God is powerful to preserve his way.
So which are the manuscripts which are preserved?
The Textus Receptus, the one from Antioch.
But the Textus Receptus that you have is actually very, very late.
They were the ones who were...
the manuscripts that we have of the Textus Receptus is which one? The Leningrad Codex? Which codex are we referring to?
The persecution and the Textus Receptus, the one...
Which manuscript is that?
They were the one that...
Aleppo Codex? The Leningrad Codex?
The real Christians, the one who were persecuted and they didn't persecute anyone.
I am taking what you're saying. But which manuscript are you talking about? The Aleppo Codex? The Leningrad Codex?
The one from Antioch.
But these are very late. They're very, very late. We have earlier manuscripts, like I've given an example of Codex Sinaiticus or Vaticanus.
Those are corrupted by a man called Origen in Alexandria, Asia, that they corrupt the manuscripts. So those are bad manuscripts. The real good manuscripts, they came from Antioch. God preserved his words through those manuscripts. Yeah, so when you read it with the manuscript from Antioch,
Let's say this is the real version of it. But this is still how many? Hundreds of years after Christ. Thousands of years after Moses. Do you have a mechanism to ensure that message is still the same from Moses, for example?
It's powerful to preserve his word.
But we know, people, as you said, from your own testimony, they got corrupted.
There were versions that they were not corrupted, but and the New Testament, they all been preserved by these people who were real Christian and were persecuted. They were not the one who persecute anyone, and they were one who to hide, because during the Inquisition they persecute real Christians.
But do you know something? Scholarship or scholars, knowledgeable people, experts in the Bible, they would say we need a manuscript of the Bible which is very closer to the event. The earliest, the better. The quality of the manuscript becomes better if it's closer to the event. If I give you a manuscript written yesterday about the Bible, and if I give you a manuscript 1,000 years ago, you would say the manuscript which is 1,000 years ago is more worthy of being...
The problem is that everybody was reading them because the word of God was very important. They were using them. So that's why...
No, Bible was never in the hands of the people.
Yes, it was in the beginning, and the people, the real Christian, they had a real manuscript of the Bible, and they hidden on the Alps.
But there's one thing missing in this equation, though. In the historical reality, the Bible was never in the hands of common people. The manuscripts were only on those people who were able to afford writing and copying a manuscript. Only few people had it. So that means the common people was on the mercy of the clergy of priests and so on to tell them what the Bible is.
That's why there were two types of people.
Bible was never...
There were the priests, they were merchants, they were doing it for money, and they were full Christian, and they persecute anybody who didn't agree to their money-making machine. And they were the real Christian that they didn't do the work for money. They were willing to die to translate the Bible and write on manuscripts, and they were persecuted during the Inquisition. And those people have kept the word of God faithful. They made sad copies because they had the fear of God.
Why are the copies still different if they tried all their best?
They are not different from the
They are.
They are.
If you compare, you see, if you compare the Alexandrine tradition and the Byzantine tradition of the manuscripts, there are two main traditions.
Because in Alexandria, the Bible says that nothing good comes from Alexandria. The Bible mentions Alexandria as a place of sin.
But what I'm saying is, when we...
They were corrupted.
I take what you're saying, but I'm saying, if you examine those manuscripts that comes from Antioch, if you examine the manuscripts, how they are copied, they still contain so much differences between the manuscripts. That's the problem the scholars are having. That is why the scholarship is such that they're saying, because of all these differences, and they're very late manuscripts, we need to go back to the earlier manuscripts. The earlier, the better.
William Tyndale, he died. Yeah, he died in the stake. He was burned with fire.
Yeah, but that was much later. William Tyndale is like...
It's very like in the, 17th century or something? I can't remember. Very late.
He did it with the fear of God, yeah? He really loved God, and he did it with fear of God. He has chosen the very best manuscript that he could find. So he did the best he could.
That he could find.
And I believe in the power of God to preserve his word. I believe that during the age there were faithful Christians that preserved the word.
That's fine to believe. That's fine to believe. But the reality is different. The reality is...
What do you think is the earliest manuscript of the Gospels?
Well, when you have a Bible, you use it, it get old, so you have to make a sad copy.
No. Give me an idea of what you know is the earliest manuscript of the Bible, of the New Testament, for example.
But I believe that God preserved the word through Valdesan and people who really had the fear of God. And they were
So the first century, there is 0 manuscripts.
They did a sad copy done by the faithful Christians.
No, I'm saying for the first century, there's 0 manuscripts. So you can never go back to the first century to find the originals because they don't exist. So what you have to rely on is fragments from the 2nd century, then 3rd century have a bit more. And they say the majority of them are like after the 8th century. You know, Dr. Bart Ehrman, he's actually an expert on the New Testament. Just 1 minute.
They were under heavy persecution, so they had to hide and keep writing the manuscript, but they did a good job.
So Dr. Bart Ehrman, who is actually an expert of the New Testament manuscripts, he says that there are as many variants, as many differences in the different copies of the manuscripts, even the late ones, as there are a number of words in the New Testament. Now, even if you have, like say, 50,000 manuscripts, the problem is if you have so many differences in them that they contradict each other even, then how can we rely on them? The credibility of these manuscripts really suffers badly.
I mean, you have to have faith that God is faithful and powerful to preserve His word. God is the Almighty God. He will have people who were faithful, who loved God, and who did it just for the love of God to wrote sad copies, yeah, and he preserved them.
How does that help with the fact that the manuscripts are not there?
Well,
when you have faith, for example, you can have faith, and you can have faith in someone who told you something wrong, and all your life you'll believe that is the truth. That's not really the way to actually believe in something, especially when your eternity depends on it.
Yeah, my experience, my conscience and testimony that what I have is what God wants me to do.
If I have an experience that Islam is true, does it make it true?
Well, I just say, it's a bit late and we need to go.
Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure speaking to you, but do think about and ponder on what I've said and read the Quran, because the Quran speaks to you. Doesn't it? The Quran doesn't
address...
like
a free copy of the Quran?
Yeah. No, Quran doesn't address the Muslims. The Quran addresses human beings. The Quran addresses Jews and Christians. So it does address you. So it's worth finding out what the Quran says about you, because it's directly addressing you.
Yeah? So
do read. and perhaps next time when we see again, we can talk about it, and you can tell me about your experience.
The same in all countries.
So they're real Christians in their best.
But think about it. If 1/4 of the world's population believe in the book called the Quran, it is indeed important to know what this Quran is about. If 1/4 of the world's population believes in the Quran, it's not Harry Potter. We're talking about 1/4 of the world population believe in this book. So we need to put some time aside to read about it.
Well, lots of people are Catholics, so some of them are really Catholic books. So.
As I said, I've given you reasons why you should think about the Quran, because the Quran corrects the misinformations and embellishments and corruption in the Bible, and you will see the truth yourself when you read it. So take some time out of it. Because in the day of judgment, you don't want to be in a position in which when God asks you, why did you not read the Quran in which I gave you the guidance and you said I didn't have time for it? Don't be in that position. Don't be in that position.
All right, okay, thanks.
Take care. Take care. Okay? Safe journey home.
Remember that the Bible says that you can only get saved through Christ. He's the door, He's the way, He's the only way, and there is no other name on heaven on earth.
Also remember that Jesus only worshipped one person, the Father only, not the Trinity. So follow Jesus Christ.
He's the only way to heaven. Yeah.
The only way to God is through worshiping God, not worshiping Christ.
Thank you.
Did the Bible change? A Muslim perspective on preservation and revelation opening. Did you know that many biblical scholars today acknowledge that there are thousands of differences among New Testament manuscripts? Now, before anyone misunderstands, this isn't about attacking Christians. It's about asking an important question. If God revealed a message to humanity, shouldn't that message be preserved accurately? Because if we don't know exactly what was originally revealed, how can we be certain what God actually said? Let's explore this from an Islamic perspective. The preservation question. When Christians talk about the Bible today, they're usually referring to a collection of books copied and transmitted over centuries. Even respected scholars such as Dr. Bart Ehrman have discussed the existence of numerous textual variants among New Testament manuscripts. Now, Christians often respond by saying, most of these differences are minor, and that's a fair point. But the Muslim question is different. The question is not whether all variants change doctrine. The question is, why are there variants at all if God intended his revelation to be perfectly preserved? If two manuscripts contain different readings, then at least one of them cannot represent the exact original wording. That creates a serious historical challenge. Access to Scripture. For much of history, ordinary people couldn't own copies of Scripture. Manuscripts were expensive. Most people depended entirely on religious authorities to tell them what Scripture said. This created a situation where the average believer had little ability to verify the text independently. Islam presents a different model. From the very beginning, the Quran was not only written down but also memorized by large numbers of people. Even today, millions of Muslims around the world have memorized the Quran cover to cover. Not just parts of it, the entire book. What does the Quran claim? The Quran doesn't claim to bring a new God. It claims to bring the same message taught by Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and all the prophets. Worship the one Creator alone. The Quran also makes a bold claim. It says previous revelations came from God, but human beings altered, forgot, concealed, or mixed parts of the message over time. In other words, Islam teaches that the original revelation was true, but not everything attributed to it today necessarily remains unchanged. This is why the Quran presents itself as a criterion, a standard by which truth can be measured. The logic of preservation. Think about it. If God intended a final message for all humanity until the end of time, wouldn't preservation be essential? The Quran addresses exactly this issue. It states that Allah Himself will preserve His revelation. And for over 1,400 years, Muslims have recited the same Quran in every corner of the world. Whether you're in Libya, Indonesia, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, or America, the Quran being recited is fundamentally the same text. That's a remarkable phenomenon in religious history. Conclusion. At the end of the day, the question isn't, what religion did I inherit? The real question is, which revelation can be traced back with confidence to its original source? Islam argues that God's guidance must be clear, preserved, and accessible to everyone. And that's why Muslims believe the Quran is not merely a religious book. It is God's final preserved message to humanity.